Okay, so we're back in our series on angels in the spirit realm. We are looking at giants in the Bible. So we're going to look at the various accounts of giants in the Bible. It's one of the interesting, controversial topics. Some people say that, oh, well, there's since that the one verse in there talks about it, is that what really happened? But, as we'll see, there's tons of verses that talk about it. They're not actually even covering all of them. So last week we looked at fallen angels and the Nephilim. And we looked at the Genesis 6 account, Genesis 6, 1 through 4, where it talks about the sons of God married the daughters of men, and they had children by them referred to as Nephilim, or giants, some versions say. The word Nephilim means giant. And we looked at various views on who these sons of gods were. And we concluded that they were either angels or beings from the spirit realm. And so we concluded that by looking at the New Testament references, some Jews, some the other references. There were mention of them also in other religious texts, and so based on a lot of things, which we can review last week's lesson, concluded that they were the angels and sons of God over the other four views that we examined, the Sethite view and some of the other views. And so we'll be looking a little more at that today. And so, and also we saw that looking at historians like Josephus and other books from Jews, that the Jews of the time clearly understood it to be the case. So at that time they thought it was that case, although some modern day Jews go with the Sethite view, saying that the sons of God were sons of Seth. And we looked at the Nephilim. The Nephilim, so those are being the children of the angels and the humans. So they're half spirit being, half human beings, and they were said to be of supernatural size, giants. And we saw that was it Peter that said that or in the New Testament it says that they were bound, the angels that fell were bound and put in hell, awaiting judgment. So given that they're bound and put in hell, then those can't be what we refer to as the demons that are here on earth. And we talked about the fact that many believe that the demons on earth were so the Nephilim were half human, half spirit. So when they died, the human part died, but the spirit part would have remained and been the demons that are here today. And then the text also talks about the giants were there before the flood, so that was the reason for the flood, to wipe them out. But they were also there after, and it doesn't actually say why they were there after. And so we talked about some of the different views. Some say that the Nephilim could have survived the flood. Some say that they could have all been wiped out, but then some more angels fell and did it again. And then another view is that, okay, Noah was of pure genealogy and his sons were, but maybe his wives weren't. So maybe his wives had Nephilim DNA in them. And that's the common view of those who believe that.
You have daughters or sons?
He had sons, and they all got married.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people look at things like, well, there was no mention of the wives until, long after they were building the ark and into it. And so when it was long after they said Noah was pure genealogy. And then we took a look at a prophecy of Jesus in Matthew 24, where he states that in the last days it will be like Noah, when people are marrying and intermarrying, and giving and taking in marriage. And so we saw that an interpretation of that could be that there will be another fall that would happen in the time of Jesus. So in the last days, it could happen again. So that was last week. So any thoughts or questions about last week's lesson? Okay, so now we'll get into this week's lessons. So we'll start talking about so we talk about the demons, that there's 3 types of demons that we've talked about last week, if we think about it. So we talked about fallen angels, which are referred to as demons. So those are angelic beings from heaven, that they were referred to as sons of God. Psalms 82, they're referred to as Elohim with the lowercase e. Like when God says, "Thou shalt have no other Elohim before me." So those are angels that have fallen, and Paul says those are demons, that the idols that they had were idols to demons. So the demons were angels, though. So those are beings that lived in heaven or lived in the spirit realm. And so in Genesis 6, it says those that fell are in chains. Or in Genesis, the ones that fell in Genesis 6 are in chains. And so they're spirit beings, but now they're in Sheol or hell. And so those are one type of beings we refer to as demons. And so it's kind of similar to when we talk about angels. We say angels, but then we say cherubim, seraphim. We talk about different categories of beings, but we kind of refer to them all as angels. But sometimes it's important to understand the distinction. So the Nephilim are referred to as demons. So the Nephilim are the offspring of the fallen angels and humans. So those were the giants. So those wouldn't necessarily be demons. So those are actual physical beings in the physical realm on earth. And then we have the demons that are plaguing us today, the ones that are, thought to be potentially the spirit part of the Nephilim that died, but they're spirit beings that are here on earth now, demons, potentially without a body of their own, that's another lesson. But they're different. So those are, the fallen angels are different than the Nephilim, which are half angels, are different than the demons that are here today, because the angels themselves, the fallen angels, could potentially take form. We saw angels took the form of a man and took the form of things, and so it's not necessarily that the demons here on earth can do that, but fallen angels can. So, okay. Any thoughts on that? Okay. All right, Noah. So we'll go back to the Noah 6 verse. So now we're going to look at giants in the Bible. So we looked at giants last week. We saw that the Nephilim were giants. So we'll read it again. Genesis 6, 1 through 4. It says, when human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God and the daughters of humans had children by them. So we see the sons of God were there on the earth. The Nephilim were on the earth in the days of Noah. It says, and also afterwards, when the sons of God and the daughters of human had children by them. Then it says, they were heroes of old, men of renown. And so last week you were asking about that. Why were they considered heroes of old? And, men of renown, that sounds like a good thing. And so looking into that more, so heroes of old is what NIV says. Some versions say they were mighty men. Some versions say various things. But so that word there is Gibborim. Is in the Hebrew is Gibborim. So it's Gibborim. They were Gibborim, and it's Ha-Gibborim, so it's a proper noun. And it has the I-M on it, which usually refers to a type of being, seraphim, cherubim. So it says they were Gibborim. So it's translated heroes, it's translated men of old, But then, so that same word is in Job. You have Job 16:14.
I do.
I'm curious what the
Right.
New Living would
Yeah.
say.
Again and again he smashed me, charging at me like a warrior.
All right. So in the King James it says, "He breaketh me with breach upon breach. He runneth upon me like a giant."
Mm.
So the word Gibberam is also translated giant in other places. So it says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. They were giants of old. They were now men. So Gibberam is a noun, particular noun that talks about giant warriors. It's usually referring to warriors, and so Gibberam is sometimes used as a word for giant. So that it is important to see what that. So it's heroes, mighty men, but it also is a word for giant. So Gibberam is one word used for giant. And so basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to go through and find the different words used for giants. Mm-hmm. And once we know what the different words used for giants, we can look for them in other places and see what type of other interaction giants had. So now we'll look at the Anakim. Numbers 13:27 through 33. So this is when they went to spy out the land. So they went to go to the promised land. Canaan sent to the promised land. Or they went to Canaan, the promised land, and God sent them. And Moses told them to spy out the land. So they're supposed to go and come back with a report about the land. And this is what they told him. They gave Moses this account. "We went into the land which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large." So Moses told them to go and bring back the fruit, and his intent was they can show everybody how great it was. But the people, they came back. They weren't supposed to give their opinion on whether we could fight them or any of that. But they came back and said, "Yeah, here's the fruit. It's good. But the people are powerful and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there." So they saw descendants of Anak there. Then they say the Amalekites live in Negev, the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live in the sea, along with Jordan. So they say they saw the descendants of Anak, and then they go on to list these other peoples who were Canaanites. So then Caleb silenced the people before Moses. "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We can't attack those people. They're stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw are of great size." So they said all of the people were of great size. So that includes the sons of Anak, the Amalekites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites. All the people we saw of great size, we saw Nephilim there. So the Nephilim, the children of the angels and humans, they saw them there. So this is after the flood. They saw them there. And then it says the descendants of Anak come from Nephilim. Mm-hmm. So the children of Anak are Nephilim. So the children of Anak are giants. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. Mm-hmm. So the descendants of Anak are giants, and they are Nephilim. So when they said earlier the descendants of Anak, they assumed that people knew they were talking about giants. So the descendants of Anak, who are also descendants of the Nephilim, are a giant race. So since they're a race, they're referred to as Anakim, but they're also referred to in some places as Anakites. So usually the nations are referred to as ites, beings are referred to with the I-M, the M, but so the Anakites are referred to as both within even the same version. Sometimes it's Anakim, sometimes it's Anakites, but it's the same people. But they're of great size. So So we got the Gibberim are giants, and the Anakites are giants. The Anakim. Okay. So let's see. You have Deuteronomy 9, 1 and 2.
Okay. Hear, Israel, you are now about to cross the Jordan to go in and dispossess nations greater and stronger than you, with large cities that have walls to the sky. The people are strong and tall, Anakites. You know about them, and have heard it said, who can stand up against the Anakites?
All right, so the Anakites are known to be tall and known to be feared. Who can stand up against the Anakites?
How tall were they? Think they were giant, like this, 10 feet tall? Or?
So there wasn't an explicit listing of how tall the Anakites were. There are listings we're going to get to of
Oh,
how
okay.
tall some others are,
All right.
which are, so I would assume they'd be the same. But generally between 9 and 14 feet.
Okay. 14 feet. Okay.
There's extra biblical literature that talks about them being, hundreds of feet and things of that nature. But
Well, they said they look like grasshoppers, so you
yeah,
imagine,
that's what you'd
They
imagine.
have
So
different. They have legs like them. Yeah,
it
that's
was
okay.
exaggeration or it was true,
yeah,
Yeah.
So it never explicitly says that in the Bible, but it's a possibility that there could have been some taller. And so, as we discussed last week, so the Bible talks about giants, but almost all of the ancient cultures of that time have stories about giants. So if you read in Egyptian writing, Indian writing, American Indian writings, the Mesopotamian writings, Babylonian writings, they all have writings about giants living there, and many of them, the giants were the offspring of some type of heavenly being and humans. And so it's a common story among all of the peoples in that area, the Semitic tribes and all of the surrounding areas. They all had common accounts
almost
of
like
this.
Gulliver. What is the story?
Gulliver?
Yeah.
Gulliver travel?
Could you go back on the term Anakites, where that came from? You had just mentioned it prior to us reading.
Oh, where it came from?
Yeah.
So it comes from, I guess there was somebody named Enoch,
Yeah.
and he was a giant. And so his descendants are called Anakites, and they're also called Anakim.
But the descendants are also the Nephilim, so are those
Well-
the same terms? Or-
Well, no, Nephilim, so he was a Nephilim, Enoch.
He was, okay,
So the Nephilim, he was a descendant of the Nephilim.
I see.
So Enoch was a descendant of the Nephilim, and he was also a giant, so his children were this giant. So the Nephilim were the first ones, the direct offspring of the first generation of the angels and humans. And then Enoch was somewhere further down, but they were giants as well,
And then the Anakites are
or his descendants.
Enoch's.
Yes, Enoch's descendants. So, okay, so now we're going to look at another group, the Rephaim. Rephaim. You have Deuteronomy 2, 10 to 11.
The Emites used to live there, a people strong and numerous, and not as tall as the Anakites. Like the Anakites, they too were considered what was the word? Rephites?
Rephites.
But the Moabites called them Emites.
Yeah, so there are a lot of ites in that, in those two verses. So the Emites used to live there. So the Emites are as tall as the Anakites. So the Emites are giants. It says, like the Anakites, they too are considered Rephaites, or some versions say Rephaim. So they're saying the Anakites are considered Rephaim, and the Emites are also considered Rephaim. And so that means that you have the Nephilim. So the Rephaim were between the Nephilim and the Anakites. So the Rephaites were first, and then the descendants of the Rephai, one of the descendants of the Rephaites was Enoch. So Rephaim, and so the word Rephaim comes from Rapha. And that one's kind of hard to debate because the word Rapha means giant in Hebrew. So, and so it also happens there was a person named Rapha who is the start of that, the Rephaim. So whether they had the word giant and they just called this guy giant, or whether they called him giant, they came up with that word because of him. I'm not sure which came first, the chicken or the egg. But so there was a man named Rapha who was a descendant of the Nephilim who was a giant, as his name said, and one of his descendants was Enoch. So the sons of Rapha, so if it ever talks about sons of Rapha, Rephaim, Rephite, then, so like here it says the Anakites, they too were considered Rephites. So it's basically saying they too were considered giants. So the Emites were considered giants just like the Anakites were considered giants. And so they use the term Rephites to just mean they were giants. And sometimes they use Anakim the same way. They were tall as the Anakim. Well, they usually say they were tall as the Anakim, but then they'll say for the Rephaim they were considered Rephaim. So Rephaim is like a race of giants, and so the Emites were giants as well. The Moabites called them Emites.
Yeah, that's where it was a little confusing. Are the Moabites calling the Emites Rephaites, or 'cause what was that second part?
So they're saying the Emites. So the Emites, there's some people that lived here, and they're tall as the Anakites. And it's saying that just like the Anakites, these people are considered Rephaim. So it's saying they're Rephaim, but it's saying, but the Moabites instead of calling them Rephaim, the Moabites call them Emites. So it's kind of alluding to, you would think they would call them Rephaim, but instead they call them Emites. Because they're Moabites, they're a different culture, so their word is Emites. The word they use is Emites. So it's a lot of ites. But it's important to get your ites right. You know what's going on. All right, let's see. Equa. You have Deuteronomy 2:19-21.
Yes. When you come to the Ammonites, do not harass them or provoke them to war, for I will not give you possession of any land belonging to the Ammonites. I have given it as a possession to the descendants of Lot. That too was considered a land of the Rephaites, who used to live there, but the Ammonites called them Zamzumites. They were people strong and numerous They were people strong and numerous, as tall as the Anakites. The Lord destroyed them from before the Ammonites, who drove them out and settled in their place.
Okay, so this is talking about the Ammonites, which were listed as some of the people who were in the Promised Land. So the Ammonites were part of the Canaanites. But they're saying that, so he's saying don't destroy them, because he's giving their land over to Lot. So
Lot descendants.
Lot's descendants, right. So it wasn't, so Lot's descendants got some land, God gave them as well. And so but these people of the land were considered Rephites. So it means they were giants. Or some of the people who lived there were considered Rephites. But the Ammonites called them Zumites. So they were living in the Ammonite land, but they weren't, since the Ammonites had a name from them, they weren't necessarily the Ammonites. So there were some giants living there, and they were referred to as Ammonites. and they were tall as the Anakites.
You think these guys were the one that were coming to Lot's house, trying to get
Oh, the
get the angels.
Oh, it could have been. I guess, yeah, that's why it was, why some crazy stuff was going on over there. That could be part of the, because they say when the fallen angels came, they were doing all types of immoral things. So that could be where that came from. So,
They came to Sodom and Gomorrah.
yeah. So now we have the term for giants. We have the Rephaim or Rephaites, Anakim or Anakites, Emim or Emites, Zumamim or Zumamites, and then Gibberim, which is used not exclusively for giants. But all right. So now we're going to look at Og, a giant. And he was one of the Amorites. You have Amos.
I used mine here. Yes. 2, 9 to 10. Yet think of all I did for my people. I destroyed the Amorites before my people arrived in the land. The Amorites were as tall as cedar trees and strong as oaks, but I destroyed their fruit and dug out their roots. It was I who rescued you from Egypt and led you through the desert for 40 years so you could possess the land of the Amorites.
All right, so the Amorites were as tall as cedars. So they were tall. So these Amorites were giants. But then, so Amorites were listed as Canaanites. Then the question is, are they saying that all Amorites are giants? Or these Amorites are giants? So you have Deuteronomy 3, Eric, 3 through 11.
Okay, yeah.
We're going to look at Og.
Yeah.
Og was one of the giants where they describe his height
Huge.
and his bed.
Bigger than Shaq.
Bigger than Shaq. Yes, he was bigger than Shaq. I'm not sure. They didn't have basketball back then.
Okay, I'll read. So the Lord our God also gave into our hands Og, king of Bashan,
Bashan, yes.
Bashan, and all his army. We struck them down, leaving no survivors. At that time we took all his cities. There was no one of the 60 cities that we did not take from them. The whole region of our God, Og's kingdom in Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls and with gates and bars, and there were also a great many unwalled villages. We completely destroyed them, as we done with Sihon, king of Heshbon, destroying every city, men, women, and children, but all the livestock and the plunder from their cities we carried off for ourselves.
Ooh.
So at the time we took from these two kings of the Amorites the territory east of the Jordan, and from the Arnon Gorg as far as Mount Hermon. Hermon is called Ziron by the Sidonians. The Amorites called it Sinir. We took all the towns on the plateau and all the Gilead and Bashan, all of Bashan, as far as Selkala, Edrei, the towns of Og's kingdom in Bashan. Og's king of Bashan was the last of the Rephaites. His bed was decorated with iron and was more than 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. It is still Rabbah of the Amorites. Man.
All right, so 9 cubits by 4 cubits. So a cubit is 18 inches. So his bed was 6 feet wide and 14 feet tall.
It's probably, I think it's probably longer than from here, right? Next to the
Taller than
table.
that guy there.
Yeah.
So his bed was 6 feet wide and 14 feet tall.
Yeah.
So Og was the king of
Mhm.
Bashan. So Bashan was one of the Amorite cities. So they
Yeah.
destroyed the Amorite
Right.
cities,
Mhm.
and Og was one of the kings of the Amorites. But it says that Og was in verse 11 it says Og was the last of the remnants of the Rephaim. So the Rephaim was giants. So it says Og was the last giant. So meaning that Og was the last giants, but he was one of the many Ammonites. Then that means that all the rest of the Amorites weren't giants. It was just Og. So there were giants among the other nations. But they were not necessarily all of the other Canaanite nations were giants, but they had giants among them. So Og was the last of the Rephaim, and they killed him. And so, I see. Any thoughts about that passage?
by 6.
13 by 6.
That would be a bed for swimming in.
Yeah. You could never fall out that bed, though.
Pretty much.
No.
Yeah.
How many pillows it take?
So did you notice anything about the way they fought these people?
Yeah.
They utterly destroyed them, the men, women, and children of every city.
Yeah.
So was that normal warfare in those days?
That's what God said.
Yeah, so.
I don't know if it was normal for anybody else. It was normal for a lot of these incidents in
Yeah,
the
so-
early Old Testament.
Yeah.
So it wasn't normal. So normally what people would do, they would fight, they would kill the men,
Firstborn.
and they would take the women as wives, and then the children, they would put them into slavery.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't kill the women and children, you would just kill the men.
But they say the male is the firstborn male. It's not just any male, it's the firstborn. It's always the firstborn at times in the Old Testament, as it's always said.
Well, that's for blessings and things of that nature. But,
Okay.
But in war, you're going to kill anybody that's holding a sword coming after you,
Okay.
no matter
No matter
where they fall.
Or it's born
you
last
gotta,
born.
you got to kill all the men.
Okay.
So you got to kill, are you a firstborn? Okay, never mind. So you generally
good.
they kill all the men.
No, none of us are firstborn. No, trust me, none of us.
I don't even, I'll be like, I don't care.
Yeah, so normally they would kill all the men, and they would leave the women and children, or they would take them captives. And then that's how you got, people had all those concubines and all the wives, and then they put the children in slavery. So that's how you got your slaves. And some of the men also into slavery, but not the warriors. You'd kill all the warriors,
Yeah.
and maybe put some of the other men in slavery, but you definitely wouldn't kill the women and the children. So this was a little different. So this was something called Karam. So it's spelled Kherem or Kharam. So Karam is a term, it's used in multiple ways, but Karam is a term that means something that's forbidden. So the first use, which isn't this use, is, so this use, the word Karam means to utterly destroy something to the point of destruction. So whenever the Bible says they utterly destroyed something, that's what they mean. It's like the men, women, the children, they destroy everything. And utterly destroyed is usually by command from God. So the other use of Karam is just something that's forbidden or exclusive status, either because it's cursed or because it's set aside for God exclusively. So when God would say, take this city and turn it over to me, then that means that it's Karam. So you're setting the city aside for God. So you can't take the women, the children,
You gotta
the animals.
kill
You can't
everything.
take the stuff to benefit yourself because it's been set aside for God. So you send them all up to God because they're all gods now. And so So Karam is also used in Exodus 20:20. It says, "Whoever sacrifices to any other god than the Lord must be destroyed." And that word destroyed is Karam. So it means must be killed. If you sacrifice to some other god while you're in the Holy Land, then you must be Karam. And so,
Wait, repeat that again. Exodus 20:20 said?
Exodus 20:20.
Says Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
God has
yeah.
come to test you,
That's what I have, yeah.
okay.
Exactly.
so
Let's
that the
see.
fear of God will be with you,
Like a typo, yeah.
to keep you
Exodus
from sinning."
22:20.
Oh, 22:20, okay. Whoever sacrificed to other god other than the Lord must be destroyed.
Yeah, it must be destroyed. So if you sacrifice to another god other than the Lord, then you must be killed. Yeah, so somebody have Deuteronomy 20:16-18?
I got
Who's
that.
it up on? That's you.
I got
Okay.
that.
So it talks about the cities that were in, or the other tribes that were in the promised land, in Canaan.
Okay. You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. However, in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not leave alive anything that breathes. Completely destroy them. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hittites, and the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you. Otherwise, they will teach you to follow all the detestable things they do in worshiping their gods, and you will sin against the Lord your God.
So these other people, the Hittites, the Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Jebusites, they're all Canaanites. So I have to maybe study out more. Why do they, because Canaanites are listed in there, why do they list them all out explicitly? But these are all Canaanites, meaning that they're all descendants of Canaan. And so so do you know anything about Canaan? Canaan was the son of Ham.
Yeah. Noah. That part, Noah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Canaan was when, do you know what Ham, the story of Ham?
I can't remember, but I read all that.
So Ham uncovered Moses' nakedness.
Yes, that's so-called. Okay. Never mind, yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
that's the term they used. So what that actually meant, we won't go into. But so Ham uncovered Moses' nakedness, and he was cursed.
Yeah, cursed, that's what it say.
No, but Ham wasn't cursed.
Moses was
Canaan was
cursed.
cursed.
Canaan was cursed. Land of Canaan was cursed.
So Canaan was cursed.
Yeah.
Ham's son was cursed.
Right.
And he said, "You'll always be a slave." So the Canaanites,
Moses, it wasn't Moses.
I mean Noah,
Noah.
not Moses.
Noah.
Yeah, Noah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Noah cursed Canaan
Yes, I remember.
and his descendants.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these ites that were utterly destroyed are those descendants of Canaan. And so the descendants of Canaan also, as we saw, the Nephilim or the giants have been interspersed within them as well. So there's multiple things going on here. And they worship other gods. Okay. So let's see. All right, so back to the giant killing. So Moses, they led campaigns. So the campaigns where God sent them out destroying these cities, Moses and Joshua, the primary reason was to clear the land for them, but also to destroy all the giants that were in the land. So let's see, do you have Joshua 11:21-23?
At that time, Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites from the hill country.
And who were the Anakites? They were giants.
They were
Huge.
giants.
Okay.
But you just said from where? And I just,
Oh yeah, from Enoch.
from Hebron, Deber, and Anak, from all the hill country of Judah, and from the hill country of Israel. Joshua totally destroyed them in their towns. No Anakites were left in Israelite territory, only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. And Ashdod did any survive. So Joshua took the entire land just as the Lord had directed Moses, and he gave it as an inheritance to Israel, according to the tribal division. Then the land had rest from war.
Okay, so we see that God's goal was to wipe out the Anakim, the giants. So Joshua, he wiped out all the giants in the land. So he wiped out all the giants that were in the promised land in Israel. It says, except only ones remain were in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod.
All three of those Philistine towns, or just two of them?
All three of them
All three?
are Philistine towns. So they're Philistine towns, so they aren't in Canaan.
Yeah.
So he destroyed all the giants in Canaan, but 3 lands in the Philistine town still had giants. Do you know of any giants in Philistine?
Maybe thinking of one in particular. Shows up in Samuel.
So,
Yeah.
and so it says once the Anakim or the giants were killed in the promised land in Canaan, there was no more war. So that goes to show that, but there's still Canaanites there. So the war wasn't to kill the Canaanites, the war was to kill the giants. So once all the giants were killed, then the war stopped. So all the giants, so Moses and Joshua killed all the giants in the promised land. And then they were at peace and they could rest. Because all the giants weren't in the promised land. Even though there were still some giants, they weren't in the promised land. And it says Joshua utterly destroyed them and their cities. So they put Karim on the cities, utterly destroying the men, the women, and the children because they had giants in them. And so if you leave women and children, then their offspring would be giants. So you have to kill the men, the women, and the children to get rid of the giants. If you just kill the men, then the women are going to have giant babies. So that's why you have to kill the men, the women, and the children.
Right.
And so giants remained in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. And those, those are Philistine cities. Those are Philistine cities. But 1 Samuel 17:3-4. The Philistines occupied one hill, and the Israelites another, with the city between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. So Goliath was a Philistine from Gath. Gath was one of the 3 cities that is said the Anakim remained. So Gath was an Anakim. Goliath. Goliath was an Anakim.
He wasn't as big as the other.
He wasn't as big as Og.
No.
He was 9 feet 9 inches tall.
Yeah.
Right. So Goliath was one of the Anakim. So Joshua and Moses killed all the Anakim in Canaan, and now there were still Philistine Anakim or giants left, and David fought those. And so we'll see David also utterly destroyed places, killing men, women, and children. And so he was also killing giant nations. You have 2 Samuel 2, or 2 Samuel 21, 18-22.
Joshua, but I can
I
see
have
it. Yeah, go for it.
Keep on.
Oh, okay.
In the course of the time, there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob. At that time, Sibbecai, the Hushathite, called Saph, one of the descendants of Rapha. In another battle with the Philistines of Gob, Elhanan, son of Jair, the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, who had a spear with the shaft like a weaver's rod.
Okay, so we see that the Saph who was killed, he was a descendant of Rapha, so he was a giant. And we see the brother of Goliath, so he was a giant, he was killed. So it's basically listing out the giants that they're going through and killing. So we know that sons of Rapha are giants. And so, okay, you can go on.
And still another battle which took place at Gath. There was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He also was descended from Rapha. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, son of Shemaiah, David's brother, killed him. These 4 were descendants of Rapha and Gath, and they fell at the hands of David and his men.
So David went on killing the
More giants.
more giants. And so David wiped out the rest of the giants. And so Joshua and Moses killed the ones in Canaan. David killed the Philistine giants. And so after David, there was peace. Solomon had peace in his time because now all the giants were gone. So let's see, if we read Joshua, we'll see another outcome of the utter destruction. Joshua 2, 8 through 11. So this is, so when Joshua was about to go and take the promised land, they sent spies in.
Yeah, right.
They sent spies in, and there, was it Rahab that hit them?
Yep.
Rahab hit
Yeah,
them, and so this is what she said to them.
Before the spies went to sleep that night, Rahab went up on the roof to talk to them. "I know the Lord has given you this land," she told them. "We are all afraid of you. Everyone's living in terror. For we have heard how the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 Amorite kings east of the Jordan River, whose people you completely destroyed. No wonder our hearts have melted in fear. No one has the courage to fight after hearing such things. For the Lord your God is the supreme God of the heavens above and the earth below."
All right, so when we looked at the lesson God versus the gods, we saw that it says the Egyptian plagues were to punish the Egyptian gods. And we saw that the reason for the plagues was that another reason was that the people would see that God was superior to the other gods they were worshiping. And so we see here also that the parting of the Red Sea and the utter destruction that was done showed the people that Rahab, that the Lord God is the God of heaven and the earth below. So it was a way of turning the other nations toward Yahweh as the supreme God. So showing that God, that he's superior to the gods they're worshiping. Let's see. Any thoughts?
I've been reading through this lately. The book of
Deuteronomy?
yeah. And I just all this just went so.
Oh,
I'm
went over
learning
your head.
now.
Oh, yeah. Well, this was, I had never known it. It's kind of interesting that if you go back, and they list all the names and all of
Yeah.
these for a reason,
Yeah.
but it's, if you go back and say, and then you connect it all, it's kind of, interesting when you connect the themes and see why this story is being told, why this statement is being made. Why do they go and say, well, the Zumites called him Rephaim? And you're just like, okay, great. So it's like, a lot of it is there for a reason. It's like telling you something. It's like, if they say, well, they're telling you they're giants. It's like, oh, okay, who would have known? It's like they threw that in there to tell me they're giants. And that explains why they were utterly destroyed.
I read all
and
that and I
explains-
just read it, just like reading whatever, right?
Yeah,
But it's just so much information.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I didn't see it either until I did the study. I was actually studying, and I'm like, oh. So it's kind of enlightening.
Yes, it is.
So let's see. In the conclusion, any other thoughts?
No.
Okay, so in conclusion one. So in conclusion, In Noah's day, the earth had been polluted with angelic beings who decided to leave their home in the spirit realm and come to the earth and marry human women. Their offspring they created were giants called Nephilim. God sent a flood to cleanse the earth of these giants. After the flood, the Nephilim were still on the earth. So God chose a different means to eliminate them from the earth this time. So God used Moses, Joshua, and David to lead Israelite armies to utterly destroy these giants and their offspring by killing the men, women, and children of these intermingled Nephilim giant nations. So although the utter destruction of the other nations served other purposes of bringing honor to God and killing those who worship other gods, we see that the main reason for these wars was to destroy the giants from the earth. Even though other Canaanite peoples remained in Canaan, God did not command that they be utterly destroyed, showing that the primary goal of the other destruction was the elimination of the giant and their offspring. Any other thoughts?
No, I've been just trying to put all this together because I started from the beginning of the year reading the Bible, right? And I used
all the
go
way
through all
through?
these names. So I know they're all Ikes and Ites,
Yeah.
right? But then I'm trying to, where does Anakim come in the beginning?
Oh,
Yeah.
so they're Canaanites. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So here's the last bit of information. Let's get into the weeds now. All right. So last week we looked at a passage, Luke 17:26, Matthew 24:37, where Jesus stated in the last days, before his coming, that there will be days, it'll be like Noah. And so hinting that there could be another fall before he returns. So as further evidence of this, we're going to look at God's prophecy in Genesis 3 and Jesus' prophecy in Matthew 13. So in Genesis 3:15, when after the fall, when Satan tricked Eve and Adam and Eve fell, he says, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring or seed and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." So it's saying there will be conflict between the human seed and Satan's seed. So what was Satan's seed? So you could consider the Nephilim, fallen angels, and demons to be Satan's seed. And if
I always just considered that snakes. With like
snakes,
like maybe I got distracted by the crushing head and striking heel stuff. It's like, well, that's just like snakes.
like all of the snakes,
Yeah, like
are Satan's
snakes.
seeds.
That's why snakes bite you, right? Because they're striking you,
Oh,
and that's why.
Because they're on the ground.
Yeah.
I
I didn't
always
even like. Yeah, I was taking it far too literally. I think.
Yeah, I always saw it that way too.
because Satan was
Yeah.
a snake.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and yeah. So now let's look at the parable of the weeds. So you remember the parable of the weeds in Matthew 13. So Jesus talks about a farmer planted seeds. He planted some seeds, and then someone snuck in and planted some weeds. And then the weeds grew up. And when it was time for the wheat to blossom, the weeds were there. And they said, "Hey, should we kill the weeds?" And then he said, "No, because you might kill some of the wheat." Because I guess it was hard to distinguish the wheat from the weeds. And so he says, "Just wait until the harvest time, and we'll do it at harvest time. And we'll bind up the weeds together and burn them." And then so this is what's going to happen in the last days as well. So if we look at that through the eyes of what we just read, Let's read Jesus' explanation, Matthew 13:37 through 43. So he answered, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the people of the kingdom. So the good seed are the people of the kingdom, the seed of the woman. The weeds are the people of the evil one. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. So the devil sows the bad seeds. The harvest is the end of the age. So the harvest is the end of the world. So this is not Jesus being figurative. This is him explaining the parable. So this is him being, saying this is the literal explanation. So the harvest is at the end of the age. When Jesus returns is the harvest. And the harvesters are the angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in fire, so it will be at the end of the age, bound and thrown into the pit. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out the kingdom, everything that causes sin, and all that do evil. They will throw them into blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has an ear, let him hear. So, it's often taught that, okay, these are just the bad people that are around that are going to get bound up and destroyed. But it could also be that these are the results of another fall, the hybrids coming, and the fact that you can't distinguish the wheats from the tare. So Jesus is pointing out the fact that you can't distinguish the wheat from the tare, so then they wouldn't be giants at this time. They would be normal size. And the angels are kind of remove them. And so if we look at that, so if we look at, in the Bible, there are multiple parables about seeds and soil. And so there are a lot of parables about bad soil, but this is the only parable about bad seeds. So let's walk in the way, let's seek the truth, and let's be the light. Amen. Yeah, I didn't realize that, because when I first studied, okay, Joshua wiped them out. Then I go back, oh wait, Moses was too. I was like, they're leading these armies and wiping out. And so because they got scared, that's why they had to wander the desert for 40 years, because they saw the giants, and they're like, we don't want to fight them. Okay, go wander the desert for 40 years. Like, they must have been really tall. Yeah. If you're gonna, instead, like, I get to go fight them, or I can walk around in the desert for 40 years.
Well, or I can go walk around in the desert until I die. Like, that was the.
It
was the entire generation.
That's true. It's like I can either die now, or I can walk around the desert for 40 years and die. And I guess they chose the desert. So they must have been pretty tall, pretty scary.